Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Cryptids and Monsters video. Alright, another entry here based on one of your past suggestions. I was actually trying to find first some information related to a suggestion involving mini elephants. I guess in a place somewhere in Thailand, if I'm not mistaken. I tried to see if I could find some information for that. Nothing really came up, but in that research I did come up with this from the same cryptidswikia.com website, and it had to do with a smaller set of these humanoid elephants, this strange cryptid of sorts that have been seen several times there in Australia. So in looking at this information, I realized there was a lot of good stuff to share. So, and it ties in apparently also to some UFO sightings too. So two in one essentially when it comes to this video. So let's go ahead and we'll share that here, and it has to do with this, the so-called elephant humanoids, or sometimes noted as the humanoid elephants, the sightings that occurred there in New South Wales, Australia. So let's go ahead and let's talk about all the information associated with this very strange set of encounters. So what were these humanoid elephants? Again, you have to go back in time, in this case to New South Wales, Australia, 1968 to be specific, and there was the first encounter, with a couple years later being the second encounter, both of them witnessed by people who were able to give pretty accurate descriptions, both matching close to one another, involving this strange creature. So the very first time it occurred, it happened in 1968, April 3rd to be exact, right in broad daylight, 1:15 p.m., and it occurred to a lady named Mabel Walsh. She stated that she was driving her nephew John over to the airport, I guess, which is on the route by some lake, and when she did so, she noted that they both saw this peculiar being of some sort near the shallow water of the lake. The lake in question, by the way, is called a Nabarine Lake, which you're looking at a picture of here. So you can imagine them traveling alongside the road, traveling about 45 miles, or somewhere around there, 45 miles per hour, according to their estimate. And when they did so, they both, I guess, must have looked, something must have caught their attention, and that's when they saw this nearby the lake. She described it as something being over a little bit 4 feet tall, dark grayish, tough leathery skin, exactly like an elephant's, in other words. It had some very, very small front legs, but its actual back legs, its hind legs, were very thick and round. Again, very much so like an elephant's. It did not have anything she could describe in terms of a tail or ears, but it did have these small eyes, and then again the front arms, the front legs being even smaller, and the way that its head was looking, it had like a snout of some sort in front, which could be interpreted either as that of an elephant, not quite as long as a trunk, but still something along those lines, or in other words also as an anteater's. And also the way that it moved was very, very keen to her, because you could imagine this, the way she stated was somehow this creature, this elephant humanoid of some sort, kind of noted that it was being spied on. If you can imagine that, even from afar, as they were looking towards it, as they were driving by, this creature must have noted it, because immediately, the way she described it, it wasted no time in propelling itself forward. It used its very powerful, thick, round legs to do like a motion of some sort. She called it a fast, shambling sideways run as it got itself out of the lake. Again, it was by the shallow part of the lake, so it got itself out of the lake and then ran to the nearest set of bushes. She again described it as a very, very strange shuffling walk, but surprisingly very fast, considering again the size of this thing. It wasn't as large as an elephant, but still, considering its size, it was still something that surprised her with regards to its speed. And then that was it. It was only for a few seconds that she saw this creature, both her and her companion, but that was enough to make a very lasting impression. She did state that she was trying to see her and John if they could stop by and get a closer look, maybe even go straight to that area, that foresty area that this creature went under, but he again was being taken to the airport, so the most they could do is they could park on the side very quickly, try to see if they could get a better angle, but they were in a hurry and they didn't want to miss his flight. So she had to get him back on the road, and then that was it. That's the last thing that she saw of this creature. That very brief set of seconds, in other words. Still, though, she actually reported this to the Daily Telegraph. I believe this is it. You're looking at a picture of it here. And she stated that she was going to try to keep a second watch with regards to this creature, trying to see, I guess, if she could park herself at another date near that lake and just stay a while and then try to see if she could find this creature. No reports, though, if she actually did that or was able to see the creature afterward, but at least that was her encounter. Another encounter, I mentioned earlier that another one happened a few years later. This, in turn, was in April of 1971, so just a couple of years later, and this involved some more eyewitnesses. In this case, there were a pair of fishermen who were doing some night fishing, again, on that lake, that very same Narrabeen Lake. And as they were there using a kerosene lamp in terms of their closest thing, I guess, to creating sight there at night, that's when that lamp picked up something. The way they described it, they said they saw a glimpse of something in the flickering light. It was something involving a gray, pigmented creature of some sort. It seemed like it was right there near their location, maybe again by the shallow lake, the shallow portion of the lake itself, but it had that same grayish skin, just like the other report. It also had that snout that looked like, again, like the trunk of an elephant. And one more time, very same thing, as soon as this creature, I guess, saw or recognized that someone was looking at it, then it completely did that same lumbering motion of some sort, same thing that happened with the other encounter, as it ran, I guess, through the water and then made itself disappear into another part of the lake. But yes, that was another encounter associated with the same creature by that same area, all the same characteristics. And then there's one more encounter that occurred. This one, though, it's kind of hard to tie in and see if this was truly with this humanoid elephant, but I guess based on the fact that this happened that same night, there was a woman who also stated that in her area she was awoken by what she described as a quote-unquote terrible gurgling noise nearby her residence. She was never able to tell or see where that noise was coming from, but imagine that, something in the dead of night making that very bizarre sound of some sort. And in her case, she could never find out what it was, but considering that it was presumably close by to this location of the lake and this other set of fishermen seeing this monster roughly around the same time, that's where it's the closest link possible with regards to her having another encounter, in this case with this humanoid elephant. But that's it. That's the closest set of encounters tied, I guess, to this lake and then also to the elephant humanoid. Now, as far as the UFO linking that I was mentioning earlier, there's this. And this is, again, a 2-for-1 type special, so that's pretty interesting. Apparently, back in 1927, there was a report given by a farmer, a guy by the name of Cecil McGann, and in it, he was able to state over 19 pages an encounter that he had one night there in the 1920s regarding his farm, and then some of the encounters that his livestock was having, and then what he saw directly. He stated that on one of those fateful nights, his herd of animals essentially were not sleeping well. Like they were stampeding almost in terror because of what they felt that something was nearby, something that was not normal, something that was completely unnatural. The cows in this case were absolutely refusing to be led back into their paddock. It seemed like they were almost trying to escape their paddock. He, in turn, this farmer, wanted to see, of course, what was occurring. He was not able to see necessarily everything up front, this farmer Cecil, about what was causing so much ruckus. But then it turns out that when he did a little bit of a more an investigation, the way he described it was he went out towards some kind of paddock of some sort, and he went across a ridge, and as he did so he saw two objects, one that he described, I guess, being nearby the bottom of the ridge, and then another one by some kind of bushes of some sort, also close by to the bridge. But most importantly, near these two objects he saw what he described as creatures of some sort that contained elephantine features. He couldn't tell though if they were anything involving spacesuits of some kind, or if these were actually the skin, I guess the closest approximation of skin to these creatures. Mind you, again, this is 1927 when this was occurring, a time when there was nothing in terms of any kind of closest thing involving spacesuits of anything at that point. So the way he was describing it was either, again, their own spacesuits, something, I guess, closest to the imagination of it, or parts of their actual body. But yes, he found out that there were these things there nearby his area, and then wisely, of course, it seemed like he did not do anything to try to get closer to them. But the very next morning, he was able to find that sure enough, there were these three pigs of his that were dead nearby that location. Their carcasses had some marks right on their necks, and there was no blood of any kind associated at that scene. So he was able to tell, though, that it was something involving whatever it was, those elephant-like creatures, those humanoid-like creatures that he saw from the previous night. They in turn had done something to these pigs. But that's it. That's about the closest tying to these elephant humanoids, if they truly were, let's say, a precursor, in this case in the 1920s, another encounter of sorts, separate from the ones that occurred a couple decades later on there in Australia. If there's one more thing to tie into, there's the idea that these elephant humanoids, the ones that we were just talking about here in these videos, that they could be tied to the Indian religion, or at least the mythology associated, particularly the Ganesha, which you're looking at a picture of here, because it too showcases elephant-like humanoids, and then some of the characteristics that match some of the previous encounters. That's just another angle to throw out there as well. But there was someone else, person I believe, that was investigating UFOs, a guy by the name of Bill Chalker, who brought up this proposal as well. But that's it. That's all the information tied to this strange set of encounters with these cryptids, this elephant humanoids. No other known instance after those encounters in the 60s and the 70s that are known of. So if anyone has any more information tied to that, please post those comments below. That would be really great to hear. Anybody from the Australia area, anybody visit that particular lake, the Narrabeen Lake. I love these stories whenever they have a very specific location that people have encountered creatures at, because I love the notion of being able to just go specifically there and try to hope and catch and see something like that again. So if anyone has been there and knows more information tied to it, post those comments. So alright everybody, thanks again as always. Take care.